Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. This is part 2 of our special 2-part series with media ecologist Jack Myers. And if you haven't watched part 1, make sure you watch part 1 because it is online and available as well. Jack, great to have you.
Good to be back.
Well, we were talking about advertising. I was teasing you because you were talking about how the industries and the advertising industry is in so much trouble. They underpay young people. They have trouble getting young people to go into the industry and especially to stay in the industry. And my tease was, oh no, young people are in the advertising industry. They're flocking to it in huge numbers.
I can't wait.
And they're going to these new advertising companies called Google. Or eBay or Amazon or obviously a company like Google or Facebook where they are totally advertising based. And we were talking about off camera kind of what's happening to the country in all of this, whether it be advertising agencies, whether it be the new media giants or whatever, whether it be cable companies, whether it be production companies, so much of this is simply revenue based, and it is. If you're a broadcast television show, your job is to attract a certain number and certain type demographically of eyeballs, so that show can sell ads. And if that show is selling advertising, even if the numbers are small, but the demographic is great, you get to stay on the air. If you're generating enough revenue for your network, you stay on the air. So has that doesn't seem to have changed at all.
Well, what's interesting, first of all, you make a really excellent point about the technology side of the advertising business, attracting large numbers of young people in technology jobs. Programmatic advertising represents a really quickly increasing share of the total advertising pie, and it requires people there sitting at the computer and navigating the buy-sell process. Facebook has, they say, almost 6 million advertisers around the world, and those people are mostly on automated, self-managed systems, and of course you need people at the other end. So sure, the technology jobs are opening up. The traditional way we look at advertising and the advertising agencies, the advertising businesses are clearly under threat from that side of the business, and that's one of the reasons why so few people are going into traditional advertising. There's a great quote in a book called The Four by Scott Galloway that talks to the point that in the past couple of years, more than 2,000 people have left the ad agency holding company WPP to go to Google, and only 29 people have gone from Google to WPP, and that those people, kind of blew out of the Google development process.
They're 55 and older, by the way.
So it really speaks that we're seeing a one-way exit of young people from the legacy part of the business to the technology side, which is also underpaid.
Well, well, look at the TV industry. The phrase now is 20-20-20. Stations are hiring people in their 20s, they're making them work 20 hours a day, and they're paying them $20,000 a year. So that's a whole nother issue. But what's also happening at the Googles and Facebooks is they have built a series of teams. So they have the person-to-person interaction. They have clients where they will send people to assist those clients so that the design isn't an totally online experience. If you're going to spend a lot of money, I guarantee you can have a Google rep or a Facebook
service. We do a lot of studies at MediaVillage, my company, where we assess advertiser marketer perceptions of the different media companies, and Google consistently gets high rates for service across the board.
Yeah, to me, it's impressive. And you mentioned the business is dead concept. In a capitalist society, you have the constant formation of new businesses, you have the death of old businesses, of course, you have the evolution of businesses if they want to survive. Isn't that pretty much what's happening in advertising?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, but as we're seeing more than 15,000 tech-based companies supported by VCs in a marketplace that probably has room for 500 and only 50 that really break through. So we've got a lot of contraction, consolidation ahead of us. but there's still new businesses, new business models developing, and certainly around e-commerce, around mobility. There are huge opportunities in the industry for young people and for those who can recognize the shifts and transformation taking place and adopt and grow their businesses. But marketing as an overall market business has been flat, economically flat for more than 2 decades. The growth has been less than 0.5% average per year for 2 decades. And the growth of advertising has been 100% driven by dollars moving from the promotional, what we used to call below the line budgets, into advertising and media, but all of that has gone to digital players. So the legacy media has been declining at a rate factoring in inflation of about 15 to 20%.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of the upfront, from what I've read, where the networks, I'm teasing you, where the networks, and I think you said they were like the upfront's a dinosaur. Most people don't know about the upfront, which is, people get the advertising agencies, the networks put on their shows in New York in early May.
85% of all spending on network television, broadcast and cable network television, is done in a 30-day period with a lot of events, a lot of parties, a lot of presentations and meetings. I don't think it's an anachronism. I don't think it's dead or a dinosaur. I think it has a lot of relevance. But again, I think we need to completely reinvent the way we look at the upfront. Marketers are increasingly looking at how to use media based on the brand association, as in like in sports, the value of associating with a PBS or a particular program on Netflix, which still doesn't accept advertising but will accept sponsorships. And we're seeing that those associations typically, if you want them to be scalable and sustainable, take 18 months to 2 years to build. It's a partnership. And the industry is set up for quick transaction, and the upfront is a quick transaction. So we need to rethink the models in the fundamental infrastructure and ecosystem and how companies can grow in that ecosystem.
Yeah, well, maybe quick $10 billion worth of quick advertising transactions.
150 billion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm talking about one deal at a time. So what about, I'm really intrigued by the fact that, of course, with DVRs, more and more people are recording programs. It used to be TV shows, for example, would get rated, and you'd find out on the overnight, what your favorite show or how it did. Yeah. Now it's the rating of that night plus 3 days, rating of that night plus 7, and you're finding in some cases that the audience sizes are doubling or even tripling based on how many people record a specific program and watch it later. Of course, when you do that, and even with certain services now, you can skip the advertising. So tell me, I know, just tell me.
Networks like the CW, some of their viewing at as much as 75 or 85% of their audiences are nonlinear, not at the same time, but
not appointment viewing.
Not appointment viewing,
right.
Although it's appointment because they want to watch it and they want to be up to it. But everyone's just, on the network side, is just hoping they do that viewing within 3 or 7 days. Otherwise, you have no value to that viewer, and that's a problem for the industry. I think that what I look at is the single biggest opportunity. You mentioned in the earlier program pharmaceutical advertising and the emphasis on the 55-plus audience. Well, the 55-plus demo is virtually irrelevant in television and almost all media, but yet when you look at the consumption, especially of broadcasting, cable, television, magazines, newspapers, huge proportions are 55 and older. And 55 and older consumers have more and more relevance. I'm a grandfather. I buy presents for my kids.
And you have more money than somebody 19.
I have more discretionary income.
So I have an answer to this, but what's your answer to it?
Well, my answer is to expand the demo, and rather than saying 25 to 54 is the older group, let's introduce the 55 to 72-year-old demo, or even the 45-year-old to 72-year-old. Let's look at a completely new demographic audience that where we're embracing a whole sector of the economy and the largest sector of media consumers, and actually allowing the media companies to monetize those audiences in ways that will help keep our current content relevant, valued, and supported economically, which it's not being now.
All right, so why, and I know we have to end this segment, but so why is the focus on that younger demographic?
It's an outdated model. They were focused on the younger demographic because they were under-delivered in media. Now with digital, the younger 18 to 34 is over-delivered in media, so you don't have to compensate in your ad plans. Your consumer is getting older, younger people are buying less, they're less brand-centric. There are so many reason upon reason upon reason upon reason to expand the demographic to include an older audience and allow the networks and media companies to monetize those audiences.
All right, let me tell you why you're totally wrong.
Great.
I think you concentrate on the younger people because they're convincible. And I think the older demographic, way smarter, way less likely to be convinced by an ad to buy a particular product. I think the older generations are well informed. They have very strong opinions about different products, different services, different companies. Much tougher group to convince to go out and buy a product or service.
I'm going to argue back.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
The research shows that the younger audience are the least brand centric, are the least likely to stay loyal to a brand. They're also, to your point, they're more likely to change brands quickly, but they're also more likely to look at brands that have relevance to them, that have purpose, that have meaning, to look at local brands, to look at farm-to-table brands that are not necessarily being supported by traditional advertising and are looking at different ways of communicating with young people. So I don't argue with your core point. I believe young people are not as impressed by the traditional 30-second, 15-second, or now the 6-second commercial.
All right, I'd agree with that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Jack Myers.
There's more of the Aaron Harber Show after this.
Young men are really being challenged right now by this gender shift. They are self-defined, Gen Z young men, self-define as feminists more than any other generation before them.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbortv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
The Rexall Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rexall Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again.
Join me and watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, this is part 2 of our special 2-part series with media ecologist and expert. I could call you all kinds of other things. It's all good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Jack Myers. All right, so you've written a lot about men, about masculinity. The title of your book, The Future of Men. Of course, I'm kind of interested in that since I hope to be around a while. So what is the future of men?
Well, some background first on why I wrote about the future of men. I had done a lot of research on the first generation to be born with the internet and mobile, and began researching them more than a decade ago. That's a generation from about mid-1990s through to 2005 to 2008, being born then. And they're a dramatically different generation. And the research that I did in the book I wrote called Hooked Up talked about the emergence of a new lean-in female class that was dominating educationally, dominating in getting jobs in job growth, dominating economically.
Right. I mean, right now you have a majority of college graduates, of people being graduated from college, are women.
More than 60%.
Right.
In the graduate schools, more and more women in the professions. And in high school, those numbers are holding too, with more than 60% of high school graduates being girls. So in my book tour, I kept getting asked what's happening with men. Why are men underperforming? And there was no research. There was no governmental research. There was no private research. So I set out to look for the statistics, and what I found was a lean-out generation of young men. And so my focus, I'm sorry
We're
to
all
say,
home
Aaron,
playing video games or what?
Well, young men are really being challenged right now by this gender shift. They are self-defined, Gen Z young men, self-define as feminists more than any other generation before them, almost 40%. They've grown up in households where the majority of households, moms are either equal or primary wage earners. Their teachers, 80% are women. The performers in their classes are female in high school and in college, and they've grown up to accept the idea of pay equality, to accept the idea that yes, girls are outperforming them. Same thing culturally. They've grown up accepting multiculturalism as a part of their reality. But then they come into their adult years. They come through college and out into society, whether it's or they graduate high school and they have financial responsibility. If they go to college, they're typically loaded with debt. This is men and women, boys and girls. But yet there's an infrastructure for the young women built on 60 years of an incredibly successful women's movement, and an incredibly powerful and supportive women's movement that has changed perceptions of women's role in the family and society, in relationships. In my opinion, that's been a very positive movement. The young men today are paying the price for the women now getting the opportunities, the priorities, and we need to continue that progress that women are making into the C-suite and elsewhere, but we can't do it at the expense of young men and boys. We can't do it at the expense of the next generation of fathers. We need to look at what we can and should be doing for them. There's the Me Too movement, of course, which is refocusing angry reaction toward men, and in that certainly appropriate and relevant movement, there's not an equivalent support infrastructure to say, what do we do for our sons? What do we do for the young men growing up to help assure they don't objectify, that they don't harass, that they're not sexist? And we're not doing enough of that in the media, in our educational systems. That an uneducated young man is far less likely to be supportive of the women's movement, yet we're institutionally increasing the number of undereducated young men in society.
Well, when it comes to certainly the advancement of girls and women, and what's happening with boys and men, I mean, it obviously doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. I mean, you could have women doing better, you can have men doing better, you could have boys doing better and girls doing better, and we all come out ahead. So to achieve that, what do we need to do to achieve that? And you mentioned the Me Too movement certainly is making everybody, both genders, much more alert to calling out inappropriate behavior. I think there are a lot of people, certainly on the male side, who are, in some cases, for the first time, really taking a look and being much more thoughtful about their interactions. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, unfortunately, you've got the opposite of that reaction, because you've got a growing number of young men who are confused and conflicted and angry. And they're being supported not only by many of the realities of our political system and our administration today, but also best-selling authors like Jordan Peterson, who wrote 12 Rules for Life. And he's even self-described, he's a gateway to the alt-right. And he's being very well received, and women are buying his books because he presents his ideas for men and young men in the context of be nicer, be more open, but at the same time he's saying the rightful place for men is dominant and the rightful place for women is in a secondary position. Yet his voice is being heard, while the voice of many advocates for young men and young women in terms of more gender equality and helping men learn how to be more empathetic, to be more supportive of women, to recognize that it's okay to be a teacher, it's okay to be a nurse, it's okay to be in these traditionally feminine roles where there are opportunities. We need more programs from kindergarten on that are gender education, and we need to create remote learning programs. We talked about gaming. You asked if all the kids are gaming. Yes, they are, so let's create educational programs in gaming and encourage that in the schools and as well as at home.
All right, well, I'm sure a hospital game of nursing can be just as bloody as a battlefield, so we'll work on that. All right, we're going to be right back to wrap up with Jack Myers.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, this is part 2 of our special 2-part series with Jack Myers, and this is unfortunately our final segment. So Jack, kind of rapid fire, but you know, we were talking about what we can do, and I'd like if you have some other thoughts. You know, what can we do to put more boys and young men on a more really productive and positive path? And also, I mean, you touched on the concept of the alt-right, and certainly there's a tribal attraction to young men looking for a place to be, kind of a social network or family to have, and that's so easily created and has been created online. I don't see us easily stopping that, but what are some solutions?
Well, media does have a major responsibility. If you think about how women and the women's movement has addressed objectification in TV content and advertising over the last 2 decades and been very successful at reversing how women are portrayed. They're now beginning to do a good job in multicultural representation more effectively, but the young men and men in general in media and advertising are still the buffoons, the idiots, the person who's incapable of figuring out how to select his own medicine or wipe a counter, or they're the sexist, objectifying young men. We are seeing some advertisers like Budweiser supporting veterans and immigrants in their messaging. P&G is doing a particularly good job, as is Unilever, in better representation. But overall, you know, the #1 most iconic TV dad of the last 20 years has been Homer Simpson. Take it out 40 years, it's Bill Cosby. So, you know, the portrayal of men today and the perception of men is a problem, and that's the view that young men have grown up with, and at the same time growing up with big boys don't cry, be a real man, be a big boy, man up. So we've got these conflicting attitudes, and media can do a really good job at changing the perception of men, and not only among women and in society, but among young men especially.
You mentioned Cosby, but if you look at the Cosby Show during its era, it was very positive, very progressive. And you had Bill Cosby playing a role that you hadn't seen really on television, and being a great model. I mean,
don't we wish we could still use that?
Yeah, well,
because we can't now.
Yeah, well, there may be a whole un-Me Too channel or something like that eventually with all that programming, it seems. But to me, that's fascinating, because here's someone who unraveled an extraordinary legacy, which probably did have a very positive mentoring and standard example.
Interestingly, some of the programs that had the most impact on this generation that I think we can look back at as role models were the Nickelodeon shows, SpongeBob SquarePants, which is now on Broadway, All That, Rugrats, Clarissa Explains It All. These were programs that really were very positively influential on the generation that we call Gen Z.
Yeah, I'm a huge SpongeBob SquarePants fan, but among other things. So what about, how do we empower women more in the media than we do today? And also, I mean, when we talked about, we have a minute left, you know, when you still look at the top corporate levels in America, totally dominated by men, literally a tiny percentage of women.
Look to the Scandinavian countries and the countries like Germany, where it's a law that women have to have a third of board memberships, and those companies are growing economically. If you look across the landscape of U.S. companies that do have women on boards, they outperform those companies that do not.
So maybe the natural economic process will improve things. Though
women are staying in their jobs longer. They're more responsible for their families' economy. And as they stay in jobs over the next decade, we'll see more and more women moving into the C-suite. The challenge is accelerating that process so it doesn't take 10 years.
Well, it's probably going to take more like 20 or 30, because a lot of those guys aren't ready to leave. So we'll see what happens. Jack, thanks so much.
Thank you, Aaron. I've enjoyed it.
My pleasure. All right, that was Jack Myers. Make sure you watch our first program with Jack as well. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.